The path under my feet. Hello, everyone. Sometimes life can feel heavy. The world can feel too loud and too fast. We can feel lost in our own homes, in our own lives. We look for a way to feel quiet again, to feel simple. We need to put one foot in front of the other and just move. My story is about a walk. It is a very long walk. It is a story about finding a path when you feel lost. Before we begin, I have a question for you. Have you ever gone on a long walk to clear your head? It does not have to be in another country. It can be in your own town or city. Please tell me about it in the comments below. Chapter 1. The Empty Chair. My mother loved her chair. It was a simple chair, made of wood. It had a soft green cushion. She sat in it every morning to drink her tea and look out the window. She watched the birds in the garden. She watched the leaves change color with the seasons. After she was gone, the chair was empty. The house was quiet. The quiet was a heavy thing. It was not a peaceful quiet. It was a loud quiet. It was a quiet full of memories and words I did not say. I work in a library. I love books. I love the smell of old paper. I love the quiet of the library. But now, the quiet of my house was different. It was not a place of comfort. It was a place of waiting. I did not know what I was waiting for. I would come home from work and see the empty chair. I would make my dinner and eat alone. The sound of my fork on the plate was too loud. I would wash the dishes and go to bed. Every day was the same. One evening, I was looking at a book at the library. It was a book about travel. It had pictures of mountains and long roads. One chapter was about a walk in Spain. It was called the Camino de Santiago. The book said it was an old path. People have walked it for 1,000 years. They walked for many reasons. Some for religion, some for adventure, some to find answers. The book had a picture of a long, empty road. The sun was rising. I looked at that picture for a long time. The road looked hard, but it also looked simple. There was only one thing to do on that road. You just had to walk. The idea was very small at first. It was like a tiny seed. I closed the book and went home. I saw the empty chair. I thought about the long road. In the house, I felt stuck. On that road, I would be moving. I could not stop thinking about it. The next day at work, I looked for more books about the Camino. I read about the different paths. I read about the places to sleep, called albergue. I read about what you need to carry. A backpack, good shoes, a few clothes. Everything you need must fit on your back. The idea grew. It was not a fast decision. It was slow. For weeks I lived my normal life. I went to work. I came home. I saw the chair. But now, when I looked at the chair, I also thought about the road. The empty chair was the past. The road was the future. It was a possible future. A future where I was not just sitting and waiting. I was doing something. I was walking. One Saturday, I went to a store that sold things for camping and hiking. I just wanted to look. I saw the backpacks. There were so many kinds. Big ones, small ones, different colors. I touched one. It was a simple, dark blue backpack. The man in the store came to me. He asked if I needed help. I told him I was thinking about a long walk. He smiled. He told me about the backpack. He said it was strong and light. I did not buy it that day, but in my mind, I was already carrying it. I could feel its weight on my shoulders. It was a good weight. It was a weight with a purpose. A month later, I made my decision. I talked to my boss at the library. I asked for 2 months off. He was surprised, but he was a kind man. He said yes. I went home and stood in front of my mother's empty chair. I said, "I am going for a walk." I said it to the chair. I said it to the quiet house. I said it to myself. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet did not feel so heavy. It felt like a space for something new to begin. Chapter 2. The weight on my back. Deciding to walk was one thing. Preparing for it was another. The walk was about being simple, but getting ready felt complicated. My life was full of things. My house was full of things. My mother's things, my things. For 35 years, I had collected things. Now, I had to choose what to carry on my back for 800 kilometers. I bought the dark blue backpack I saw in the store. I brought it home and put it on the floor in my living room. It looked small and empty. For days, it stayed there. It was a challenge. It was asking me, "What do you really need?" I started with the most important thing, my shoes. The books all said the same thing. Good shoes are everything. I went to 3 different stores. I tried on 10 pairs of hiking boots. I walked around the store in them. I walked up and down the small fake ramp they have. I chose a pair that felt like a part of my feet. They were not beautiful. They were brown and strong. They were practical. Then came the clothes. The book said to take only what you need. 2 pairs of pants, 2 shirts, 1 warm jacket, 3 pairs of socks, a hat for the sun, a rain jacket. I laid them all on my bed. It looked like so little. I was used to having a closet full of choices. Now my choice was this shirt or that shirt. I washed them with special soap. I folded them very carefully. I put them in the backpack. I needed other things too. A sleeping bag, a small towel, soap, a toothbrush, a small medical kit for my feet. The feet were so important. The books talked a lot about blisters. Blisters are small painful bubbles on your skin. I bought special bandages and tape. I bought a small book to write in, a pen, a map of the Camino. I did not take a camera. I wanted to see things with my eyes, not through a small screen. I wanted to keep the memories in my head. Each item I chose had a purpose. There was no room for maybe. There was no room for just in case. Every object had a weight. I put everything in the backpack and I tried to lift it. It was heavy. Too heavy. I took everything out again. I looked at my small pile of things. What could I leave behind? I had a book to read. It was my favorite book, but it was heavy. I decided to leave it. The library was my work, but on this walk, I wanted to read the world around me. I took out 1 shirt. I could wash my clothes every day. I found a smaller bottle for my soap. I packed the bag again. I lifted it. It was still heavy, but it was better. I put it on my back. I walked around my house with it. I walked from the living room to the kitchen. I walked upstairs to my bedroom. I felt the weight on my shoulders and my back. This was my home for the next month. Everything I needed was inside. This weight was my responsibility. It was also my freedom. I was not tied to my house full of things. I was only tied to this small blue backpack. The last thing I packed was a small photo of my mother. It was a picture of her in her garden. She was smiling. The sun was on her face. The photo was very light. It added almost no weight, but it felt like the most important thing in the bag. I put it in a small plastic bag to protect it from the rain. I placed it in a small pocket on the side. She would be with me. I bought my plane ticket. The ticket was real. The walk was real. The night before I left, I stood in my living room. The house was clean and quiet. My backpack was by the door. I looked at the empty chair one last time. I was not running away from the sadness. I was walking with it. I was carrying it with me, along with everything else in my bag. I hoped that by walking, I could learn how to carry the sadness. Maybe it would become lighter too. Chapter 3. The starting line. The journey to the start of the Camino was a journey itself. I took a plane to Paris. Then I took a train to a city called Bayonne. From Bayonne, I took a smaller train to a small town. The town was called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. It was in France, at the bottom of the big Pyrenees Mountains. This town was the beginning of the path for many people. I arrived in the afternoon. The town was old and beautiful. The streets were narrow and made of stone. The houses were white with red or green wood. A small river ran through the middle of the town. It felt like a place from a storybook. But I was not there for a holiday. I was there to walk. I felt a little lost. I saw other people with backpacks. They all looked like they knew what they were doing. They looked strong and confident. I felt like a student on the first day of a new school. I found the pilgrim's office. This was the place where you get your credential. The credential is a pilgrim passport. It is a small paper book. At every place you sleep on the Camino, you get a stamp. It is proof that you are walking the path. Inside the office, a woman with kind eyes sat at a desk. She spoke English. She asked me my name and where I was from. She asked me why I was walking the Camino. It was a big question. I did not have a simple answer. I just said, for personal reasons. She nodded. She understood. Many people had personal reasons. She gave me my credential. She stamped it with my first stamp, Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. It was official. I was a pilgrim. She gave me a map of the first day. The first day was the hardest. We had to cross the mountains. Take your time, she said. The mountain is big, but you are strong. I was not sure if I was strong. I found my albergue for the night. It was a simple house with many beds in one room. The beds were bunk beds, one on top of the other. I had never slept in a room with so many strangers. I chose a bottom bed in a corner. I put my backpack down. I took out my sleeping bag. This was my small space. That evening, we all ate dinner together. There were people from all over the world. A man from Germany, a young woman from Korea, a couple from Canada. We did not talk much. We were all a little nervous about the next day. We ate a simple meal of soup, bread, and pasta. The food was warm and good. We were all a little quiet. We were all thinking about the walk. I went to bed early, but I could not sleep. I listened to the sounds of the room. People whispering in different languages. The sound of someone turning in their sleeping bag. I thought about my comfortable bed at home. I thought about my quiet house. Here, everything was shared. the room, the table, the path. I felt very alone, but I was also not alone. We were all here for our own reasons, but we were all starting in the same place. I thought about the mountain. It was waiting for me. I was afraid. My body was not used to walking for hours. My mind was full of doubt. Could I do this? What if I fell? What if I got lost? The fear was a cold feeling in my stomach. Then I thought about my mother's chair. I thought about the heavy quiet of my house. The fear of staying the same was bigger than the fear of the mountain. I had to try. I closed my eyes and imagined the long road from the book. I imagined putting one foot in front of the other, again and again. That was all I had to do. Just that. The thought was simple. And in that simple thought, I finally found some sleep. The morning would come soon, and I would start walking. Chapter 4. The Breath of the Mountain. The morning was dark and cold. People started to wake up very early, before the sun. The room was full of quiet sounds. The zip of a backpack, the rustle of a rain jacket. No one spoke much. We were all preparing for the big day. I ate a small breakfast of bread and coffee. The coffee was hot and strong. It felt good in the cold morning. I put on my boots. I tied the laces very carefully. I put my backpack on my shoulders. I adjusted the straps. It felt heavy. I walked out of the albergue and into the dark street. A few other pilgrims were already walking, their shapes like shadows in the early morning light. I found the yellow arrow. The Camino is marked by yellow arrows. They show you the way. For the next month, my job was to follow the yellow arrow. The path started to go up almost immediately. We left the small town behind and started to climb the Pyrenees Mountains. The road was steep. My legs started to hurt after only 30 minutes. My breathing was heavy. I could hear my own heart beating in my ears. I thought, how can I do this for a whole day? How can I do this for a month? I stopped and looked back. The town was small below me. The sun was starting to rise behind the other mountains. The sky was turning from dark blue to soft pink and orange. It was beautiful, so beautiful. The air was clean and cold. I took a deep breath. The mountain air filled my lungs. It felt pure. I started walking again. I found a rhythm, a slow, steady rhythm. Left foot, right foot. Breathe in, breathe out. I did not look up at the top of the mountain. That was too far. I just looked at the path in front of me. I looked at the next few steps. That was all I needed to think about. I walked for hours. The path went through green fields. There were sheep everywhere. They had bells around their necks. The sound of the bells was soft and musical. It was the only sound for a long time, except for the sound of my own walking and breathing. I saw other pilgrims. Sometimes I walked behind someone. Sometimes someone walked behind me. We did not talk. We just shared the path. Sometimes we would stop for water and nod at each other. The nod said, "This is hard, but we are doing it." It was a shared understanding without words. The weather changed quickly on the mountain. One moment, the sun was warm. The next moment, a cloud would cover the sun, and it was cold. Then it started to rain. It was a light, cold rain. I stopped and took out my rain jacket. The jacket made a soft sound in the rain. My body was tired. My shoulders hurt from the backpack. My legs felt weak, but my mind was quiet. For the first time in a long time, My mind was not full of sad thoughts. It was full of simple things. The feeling of the rain on my face, the sound of my boots on the wet ground, the sight of the yellow arrow showing me the way. My world was very small. It was just the path, my body, and the mountain. In the afternoon, after many hours of walking, I reached the top. There was a small monument there. I stopped and looked around. I was high up. I could see mountains all around me. I was in Spain. I had walked from France to Spain. I had crossed a mountain with my own 2 feet. I felt a strong emotion. It was not just happiness. It was a feeling of strength, a quiet strength. The woman in the pilgrim's office was right. The mountain was big, but I was strong. I was stronger than I thought. I sat down and ate a small piece of bread. It was the best bread I had ever tasted. I drank some water. I looked at the long path ahead of me, going down into Spain. The hardest part of the day was over. I had done it. I still had a long, long way to go. But I had taken the first step, and I had climbed the first mountain. Chapter 5. A Bed and a Plate. The walk down the mountain was easier on my lungs, but harder on my knees. Every step down sent a small shock through my legs. The sun came out again, and the path was beautiful. It went through a forest with old trees. The light came through the leaves and made patterns on the ground. I finally arrived in a small village called Roncesvalles. It was just a few buildings, a big old church and a large albergue. I was so tired. My whole body ached. I walked into the albergue. It was a huge building, like a hospital. There were long rooms with many, many bunk beds. A volunteer gave me a bed number, bed 112. I found my bed and just sat down. I did not even take off my backpack for a few minutes. I just sat. I had walked for more than 8 hours. I had walked 25 kilometers. Slowly, I took off my boots. My feet were sore. I had one small blister. I cleaned it carefully and put a bandage on it. I took a shower. The hot water was a miracle. It washed away the sweat and the tiredness of the day. I washed my clothes in a sink. I hung them outside to dry. These were the simple tasks of a pilgrim. Walk, care for your feet, wash, eat, sleep. That evening, there was a communal dinner, a pilgrim's meal. We all sat at long wooden tables. The room was full of tired but happy people. The man from Germany was there. The woman from Korea was there. We were all different, but we were all the same. We were pilgrims. We had all climbed the same mountain that day. The meal was simple, a soup, then some chicken and rice, and a piece of fruit, but it felt like a feast. We were all so hungry. This time people talked more. We did not have deep conversations. We talked about the walk. The last part was very steep, said the German man. The sheep were beautiful, said the Korean woman. We spoke in simple English. We used our hands. We smiled. Language was not a barrier. Our shared experience was the language. After dinner, I went to a service in the old church. It was called a pilgrim's blessing. The priest spoke in Spanish, but I understood the feeling. He was welcoming us. He was wishing us a safe journey. At the end, he read a list of the countries the pilgrims came from that day. Germany, Korea, Canada, the United States, Japan, Brazil. So many places. We were all so far from home. but we had found a strange new home on this path. I went back to the albergue and climbed into my sleeping bag. My body was in pain. Every muscle hurt, but my mind was calm. I was not thinking about the empty chair. I was not thinking about the heavy quiet. I was thinking about the feeling of the sun on my skin, the sound of the sheep's bells, the taste of the warm soup. I had everything I needed: a bed to sleep in, food to eat, a path to walk tomorrow. It was a simple life. It was a hard life, but it felt right. It felt real. I closed my eyes. Sleep came easily. I was a pilgrim, and my only job was to walk. Chapter 6. The Kindness of Strangers. The next few days, I fell into a routine. Wake up early, pack my bag, walk, stop for a simple lunch, walk more, find an albergue, care for my feet, wash my clothes, eat, sleep. The routine was simple, and my life became simple. My thoughts became simple too. I stopped worrying about the future. I stopped thinking too much about the past. My mind was focused on the present moment, the next town, the next yellow arrow, the next glass of water. The landscape changed. The mountains were behind me. Now I was walking through rolling hills and small villages. The villages were old, with stone houses and narrow streets. Sometimes I would walk through a farm. Chickens would run across the path. A dog would bark from a distance. The world felt slow and peaceful. One afternoon, the sky turned dark grey very quickly. A storm was coming. The wind started to blow hard. Then the rain began. It was not a light rain like on the mountain. It was a heavy, cold rain. The water came down so fast, it was hard to see. My rain jacket helped, but soon I was wet and cold. The path became muddy. My boots were heavy with mud. I was walking alone. There were no other pilgrims in sight. The next village was still 5 kilometers away. I felt a little scared. The wind was so strong. I was cold and tired. I just wanted to stop. I saw a small farmhouse on the side of the path. There was a light in the window. I thought about stopping and asking for help, but I was a stranger. I did not want to bother anyone, so I kept walking. My head was down, watching my muddy feet. Suddenly, a car stopped on the small road next to the path. An old woman rolled down the window. She shouted something in Spanish. I did not understand. I just shook my head and said, "No hablo español." I do not speak Spanish. She pointed at me. Then she pointed at her car. Then she pointed down the road. She was offering me a ride. The rules of the Camino say you should walk every step. But the rain was so heavy. I was so cold. I thought for a moment. Then I smiled and shook my head. "Gracias." "Pero no," I said. "Thank you, but no." I pointed to my feet and then down the path. I tried to say with my hands that I had to walk. She looked at me. She seemed to understand. She nodded. Then she did something surprising. She got out of her car. She was holding a big umbrella. She came to me and gave me the umbrella. Then she took a small bag from her car. Inside were 2 oranges. She gave them to me too. She said one word, "Buen camino." It means good way or good journey. It is what people say to pilgrims. Then she got back in her car and drove away. I stood there in the heavy rain, holding the umbrella and the oranges. I was a complete stranger. She did not know me, but she saw that I was in trouble, and she helped me. She did not expect anything back. It was a simple act of kindness. I started walking again, now under the big umbrella. The umbrella helped a lot. I felt warmer. I peeled one of the oranges as I walked. It was sweet and fresh. It gave me energy. The kindness of the old woman gave me energy too. It made my heart feel warm, even though my body was cold. I finally reached the village. I found the albergue and went inside. I was wet and covered in mud, but I was smiling. That day I learned that the Camino is not just a path on the ground. It is also a path of people. It is the pilgrims who walk it and the people who live along it. The kindness of that woman was as important as any yellow arrow. It showed me I was on the right path. Chapter 7. The Sound of a City. After days of walking through small villages and quiet countryside, I arrived in a city. The city was called Pamplona. It was a big place, full of cars and people and noise. It was a shock to my senses. For days, the only sounds I heard were the birds, the wind, and my own footsteps. Now I heard car horns, people talking loudly on their phones, and music from shops. I followed the yellow arrows through the city streets. It felt strange. The arrows were painted on the sidewalk or on the side of a building. I was a pilgrim in the middle of a modern, busy city. People were rushing to work or to the shops. They did not notice me with my backpack and my walking stick. I was a slow person in a fast world. I found the albergue. It was in an old building in the center of the city. It was clean and modern. I did my usual routine. I showered, washed my clothes, and rested my feet, but I could not rest my mind. The noise of the city came in through the open window. It made me feel anxious. I missed the quiet of the path. That evening, I decided to walk around the city. I did not want to hide in the albergue. The city was part of the Camino too. I walked through the main square. It was a beautiful big square with cafes all around. People were sitting outside, drinking coffee and talking with friends. They were all wearing clean, nice clothes. I looked at my own clothes. I was wearing my walking pants and a simple t-shirt. I felt out of place. I felt lonely in the middle of all those people. On the path, when I was physically alone, I did not feel lonely. I felt connected to the nature around me. I felt connected to the other pilgrims, even when we did not speak. But here, in the city, surrounded by hundreds of people, I felt very alone. No one here knew my journey. No one knew that I had walked for days to get here. I bought a piece of fruit from a market and sat on a bench to eat it. I watched the people, families with children, young couples holding hands, old friends laughing. I wondered about their lives. Were they happy? Did they have quiet, empty chairs in their homes too? Then I saw another person with a backpack. It was the German man I met on the first night. His name was Klaus. He saw me and smiled. He came and sat on the bench next to me. "A big city," he said. "Yes," I said. "It's very loud." "It is good for one night," he said. "We can buy new bandages for our feet." He smiled. He was always practical. We sat in silence for a few minutes. We watched the people in the square. It was a comfortable silence. We were two pilgrims together. Two slow people in a fast city. We did not need to talk about our feelings. We both understood. The city was a strange place for us now. Our world was the path. Tomorrow we walk again. he said. Back to the quiet. Yes, I said. I am looking forward to the quiet. We said goodnight and I walked back to the albergue. Seeing Klaus made me feel better. It reminded me that I was part of a community. We were a quiet, slow-moving community walking through this fast country. The city was just a stop. It was a place to rest and get supplies. But it was not our home. Our home was the path. The next morning, I was happy to leave the noise behind. I was happy to find the yellow arrow that led me out of the city, back to the dusty track, back to the sound of my own footsteps on the earth. Chapter 8. The Long Flat Land. After the hills of the beginning and the noise of the city, the landscape changed again. I entered a part of Spain called the Meseta. The book said the Meseta was a difficult part of the Camino. Not because it was steep. It was the opposite. It was completely flat. For days and days, the path was a straight line. It went on forever. In the morning, I could see the village I was going to walk to. It looked so close, but I would walk for hours, and it would still look far away. The sun was strong on the Meseta. There were no trees. There was no shade, just the big blue sky above, and the flat, dry earth below. Some pilgrims did not like the Meseta. They said it was boring. They took a bus to the next section, but I wanted to walk every step. I wanted to see what the Meseta would teach me. The first day on the Meseta was hard. The heat from the sun was strong. The straight path felt endless. My mind became bored. I started to think too much. I thought about my mother. I remembered her when she was sick. The memories were painful. I felt the sadness coming back. Like a heavy cloud. There was nothing to look at. No beautiful mountain. No interesting village. There was just the path and my thoughts. And my thoughts were not good company. I tried to listen to music, but it felt wrong. The silence of this place was too big for music, so I walked in silence. I listened to my own breathing. I listened to the crunch of the gravel under my boots. I watched my own shadow on the path. It was long in the morning. It was short at midday. It was long again in the evening. My shadow was my only companion for many hours. After a few days, something changed. I stopped fighting the flatness and the silence. I started to accept it. My mind became quiet. It was like the land around me, flat, open, and quiet. I was not thinking about the past or the future. I was just there. I was just a small person walking under a big sky. I started to notice small things. The different colors of the dry grass. The way the wind made waves in the fields of wheat. A small bright red flower growing by the side of the path. The beauty of the Meseta was a quiet beauty. You had to look for it. You had to be patient. The sunsets on the Meseta were incredible. The sky would turn orange, pink, and purple. The colors were so big and bright. At the end of a long, hot day of walking, I would sit outside the albergue and watch the sun go down. It felt like a gift, a reward for the hard day's walk. One day I was walking, and I felt a deep sense of peace. The sun was warm on my skin. The sky was clear blue. The path was straight and long in front of me. I was completely alone, but I did not feel lonely. I felt connected to everything, to the earth under my feet, to the sky above me. I thought about my mother. This time it was not a sad memory. I remembered her smile. I remembered the feel of her hand. The memory was not heavy. It was light. It was just a part of me. I realized that the meseta was like my grief. It was a long, hard, empty space. You cannot go around it. You have to go through it. You have to walk it, step by step. And if you are patient, you can find small moments of beauty in it. And you learn that you can survive it. You can walk through the emptiness and come out on the other side. The meseta was not boring. It was a place of meditation. It was a place of healing. Chapter 9. Water from a Fountain. The routine of the walk was now deep in my bones. My body was stronger. My legs did not hurt as much. My backpack felt like a part of me. I knew how to care for my feet. I knew how to wash my clothes, so they would be dry by morning. I knew the simple rhythm of the pilgrim's life. One day was very hot. It was hotter than the other days on the meseta. The sun was very strong. I started walking very early, before sunrise, to avoid the worst of the heat. But by 10 o'clock in the morning, it was already incredibly hot. The path was dry and dusty. I was walking between two small villages. The distance was about 12 kilometers. There was nothing in between. No houses, no cafes, no trees. Just the flat, open land. I had a bottle of water with me. I drank it slowly, but the heat was strong and I was sweating a lot. Soon, my water bottle was empty. I was still 5 kilometers from the next village. My mouth was dry. My head started to hurt a little. I knew it was important to drink water. I started to feel worried. The sun felt like a heavy weight. I walked slower. Every step was an effort. Then, in the distance, I saw something. It looked like a small stone building. As I got closer, I saw that it was a fountain, an old stone fountain by the side of the path. I did not know if there would be water. Sometimes these old fountains are dry. I walked faster. Hope gave me energy. I reached the fountain, and I heard a beautiful sound. The sound of running water. Water was coming out of a small pipe and falling into a stone basin. It was clean, cold water. I put my hands under the water. It was so cold. It felt like a shock. I splashed the water on my face and my neck. It was the most wonderful feeling in the world. I filled my water bottle. I drank and drank. The water was fresh and pure. It tasted better than any water I had ever had in my life. I sat in the small bit of shade from the fountain's wall. I drank more water and rested. I was so grateful. Grateful for this water. Grateful for this fountain. Someone built this fountain a long time ago. They built it for pilgrims like me, walking on this hot, dry path. It was another act of kindness from a stranger from the past. A few minutes later, another pilgrim arrived. It was the young woman from Korea. Her name was Jin. She also looked very tired and hot. Her face was red from the sun. When she saw the water, her face broke into a big smile. "Water," she said. It was one of the few English words she knew. "Yes, water," I said, and smiled back. We did not need to say more. We both understood the importance of this simple thing. We sat together in the shade and drank our water. We shared a small piece of chocolate that I had in my bag. We rested for about 20 minutes. Then we started walking again. The village was still a few kilometers away, but now it felt possible. We had water. We had energy. That day, I learned a lesson about gratitude. At home, I had water all the time. I just turned a tap and water came out. I never thought about it. But on the Camino, a little bit of cold water from an old stone fountain felt like the greatest luxury in the world. It made me realize how much I had and how little I appreciated it. The Camino was teaching me to see the world with new eyes. It was teaching me to be grateful for the small, simple, important things, like a drink of cold, clean water on a very hot day. Chapter 10. The Stories of the Night. One of the special parts of the Camino was the evenings in the albergues. After a long day of walking, we would all arrive at our destination. We were all tired. Our first actions were always the same. Take off the heavy boots, claim a bed, and take a shower. Then a quiet energy would fill the place. We would sit outside in the evening sun, our clean clothes hanging on a line to dry. We would write in our journals or stretch our sore muscles. And sometimes we would talk. The conversations were never forced. They happened naturally. We were a temporary family, brought together by the path. I remember one evening in a small albergue, in a tiny village. There were only 10 beds. The owner, an old man named Mateo, cooked dinner for all of us. We sat around one big table. The food was a simple stew, but it was delicious. At the table, there was Klaus from Germany, Jin from Korea, a young couple from Australia, a man from Brazil, and a few others. We started to share stories, not our whole life stories, but small pieces of ourselves. The man from Brazil, named Paulo, told us he was walking because he had just finished his cancer treatment. He was walking to celebrate being alive. He wanted to feel the strength in his body again. As he spoke, his eyes were bright with life. We all listened in silence. His story was a powerful reminder of how precious life is. The Australian couple was walking for their honeymoon. They laughed as they told us it was a strange choice for a honeymoon. Their friends went to a beach. They chose to walk and get blisters. But they said it was perfect for them. They were learning about each other, about how they handled challenges together. They said that if their love could survive the Camino, it could survive anything. Then Klaus, the practical German man, told us his story. He was an engineer. His life was all about numbers and plans. He had retired last year. He did not know what to do with his time. He felt lost without his work. His wife told him to go for a walk. "Go find a new plan," she said. He laughed. "I am still looking for the plan," he said. "But maybe the plan is just to walk." Jin, the young Korean woman, spoke very little English, but she had a small notebook. She drew pictures to help tell her story. She showed us a picture of a big office building. She drew a picture of herself, with a sad face, sitting at a desk. She had quit her job. It was a very stressful job. She was walking to find peace, to find what she wanted to do next with her life. Then it was my turn. The others looked at me. I was a quiet person. I did not usually share my feelings with strangers. But these people did not feel like strangers anymore. We had shared the path, the sun, the rain, and the pain in our feet. So I told them. I told them about my mother. I told them about the empty chair and the quiet house. I told them I was walking to learn how to live with the quiet. No one said anything for a moment. Then Paulo, the man from Brazil, reached across the table and put his hand on mine. He just nodded. He understood. Everyone at the table understood. We all had our reasons. We all had our own empty chairs in our lives. We were all walking with our own sadness, our own hopes, our own questions. That night, I realized we were all carrying 2 backpacks, one on our back, with our clothes and our sleeping bag, and one in our hearts, with our stories and our reasons for walking. The backpack on our shoulders got lighter as we used our supplies, but the backpack in our hearts got lighter when we shared it with others. We finished our dinner. We washed the dishes together. We went to our bunk beds. The small albergue was quiet. I felt a sense of connection to the people sleeping in the room with me. We were from different worlds. We spoke different languages, but our hearts understood each other. The Camino was not just a physical journey. It was a journey of the heart, and it was a journey we were all taking together. Chapter 11. A small injury. For many weeks my body felt good. I was strong. I was careful. I did my stretches in the morning and in the evening. I listened to my body. If I was tired, I walked a shorter day. I had learned the rhythm of the path. But the Camino always has a way of teaching you new lessons. I was walking into a bigger town called Leon. The path was not a dirt track anymore. It was the hard sidewalk of the city's suburbs. It was a long, boring walk into the city. I was not paying attention. I was thinking about what I would eat for dinner. I was dreaming of a real bed in a small hotel, not a bunk bed in an albergue. Because I was not paying attention, I did not see a small crack in the sidewalk. My foot twisted. I felt a sharp pain in my ankle. I fell down on the hard ground. It was a stupid, simple fall. I sat there for a moment. The pain in my ankle was strong. I tried to stand up. I could put a little weight on it, but it hurt a lot. A woman walking her dog came to help me. She asked if I was okay in Spanish. I pointed to my ankle and tried to smile. I said, "I think so." I knew I had to keep going. The albergue was still 2 kilometers away. I started to walk very, very slowly. Every step was painful. The joy of walking was gone. Now walking was just pain. My easy rhythm was broken. Left foot, good. Right foot, pain. Left foot, good. Right foot, pain. It was a long 2 kilometers. When I finally arrived at the albergue, I was almost crying. Not from the pain, but from frustration. I was so angry with myself. Why was I not paying attention? What if I could not walk tomorrow? What if my Camino was over? I took off my boot very carefully. My ankle was swollen. It was starting to turn a little blue. I knew this was not a good sign. I sat on my bed and put my foot up. I felt very sorry for myself. An older pilgrim, a woman from France, saw my ankle. She came over to my bed. She did not speak much English, but she was clearly a very experienced walker. She looked at my ankle with serious eyes. Then she went to her backpack. She came back with a special cream. She pointed to my ankle and then to the cream. She was offering me her medicine. I let her help me. She gently put the cold cream on my swollen ankle. It felt good. Then she took a bandage from her bag and wrapped my ankle very tightly. She showed me how to keep my foot elevated on my backpack. She used simple words and hand gestures. "Rest," she said. "No walk tomorrow." The idea of not walking tomorrow was terrible. I had walked every single day for more than 3 weeks. But I looked at my ankle. I knew she was right. I had to rest. The next day, for the first time, I did not wake up before the sun. I stayed in my bed. I listened as all the other pilgrims got ready. I heard them whispering and packing their bags. I heard their footsteps as they left the albergue, one by one. Soon, the big room was empty and quiet. It was just me and a few volunteers who ran the albergue. I felt sad and left behind. My Camino was paused. I spent the day with my foot up. I read a book. I wrote in my journal. I talked to one of the volunteers, a young man from Spain. He told me, "The rest is part of the Camino too. The Camino provides what you need. Today, you need to rest." He was right. My body needed to heal, but my mind needed to rest too. I had been so focused on moving forward, on reaching the next town, I had forgotten to just be still. My injury forced me to be still. It forced me to be patient. It forced me to accept help from a stranger. I stayed in Leon for 2 days. I did not walk. I rested. My ankle slowly started to feel better. The swelling went down. On the 3rd day, I put on my boot very carefully. I stood up. It still hurt a little, but it was much better. I knew I could walk again. I would have to walk slowly. I would have to be careful. I thanked the French woman. She just smiled and patted my arm. "Buen camino," she said. My injury taught me a lesson. It taught me humility. I was not stronger than the path. I had to respect it. And it taught me that sometimes the most important part of a journey is the moment you are forced to stop. Chapter 12. The Iron Cross. After my rest in Leon, I started walking again. My ankle was weak, so I walked much slower than before. At first, this was frustrating. Other pilgrims walked past me easily, but soon I started to enjoy the slow pace. I saw more. I noticed the details, the shape of a leaf, the color of a stone, a small lizard sunning itself on a rock. I was not in a race. The journey was not about speed. The landscape started to change again. I was leaving the flat meseta behind. The path started to climb into beautiful green mountains. The air was cooler. It was a welcome change. One morning, I started a climb to a special place on the Camino. It is called the Cruz de Ferro, the Iron Cross. It is one of the highest points on the path. It is a very simple monument. It is a long wooden pole with a small iron cross on the top. At the bottom of the pole is a large pile of stones. There is a tradition on the Camino. Before you leave home, you choose a stone. A small stone that fits in your hand. You carry this stone with you for the whole journey. The stone represents something you want to leave behind. A burden, a worry, a sadness, a fear. When you reach the Cruz de Ferro, you leave your stone on the pile. You leave your burden at the foot of the cross. Before I left my home, I had gone into my mother's garden. I found a small smooth grey stone. It was a simple stone from the earth she loved. I had carried this stone in the side pocket of my backpack for hundreds of kilometers. It was my sadness. It was the weight of my grief for my mother. The walk up to the cross was long and steady. It was a beautiful walk through a quiet forest. As I got closer, I saw other pilgrims walking quietly. We all knew this was a special day. No one was talking much. We were all thinking about our stones and what they meant to us. I arrived at the top. The cross stood tall against the blue sky. The pile of stones at its base was huge. It was a small mountain of stones. There were stones of all shapes and sizes, from all over the world. Each stone was a story. Each stone was a burden someone had carried. Each stone was a prayer or a hope. It was a powerful, silent place. I walked to the pile. I took my small grey stone from my backpack. I held it in my hand for the last time. It was warm from the sun. I thought about my mother. I thought about her smile, her garden, her empty chair. I thanked her for my life. I told her I missed her, and I told her it was time for me to let go of the heaviest part of my sadness. I would always love her. I would always miss her. But I did not need to carry the pain like a heavy stone anymore. The walk had taught me that I was strong enough to live without that weight. I closed my eyes and said a quiet goodbye. Then I placed my stone gently on the pile with all the other stones. It was a small stone. It did not make a sound. But for me, it was a huge moment. I felt something shift inside me. A feeling of release, a feeling of lightness. I did not cry. I just felt a deep sense of peace. I stood there for a long time, looking at the mountains around me. The world felt bigger and more open. I turned and started to walk down the other side of the mountain. My backpack felt the same. The weight on my shoulders was the same, but the weight in my heart felt lighter. I had left my stone behind. I was ready to walk the final part of my journey. Chapter 13. The Green Hills of Galicia. The path after the Iron Cross led me into a new region of Spain. It was called Galicia, and it was completely different from the Meseta. Galicia was green. It was a land of rolling hills, lush forests, and small farms. The air was often misty and cool. It smelled of wet earth and trees. It reminded me a little of home. The path here was often a small, narrow track through the forest. The trees were old and covered in green moss. It felt like walking in an enchanted, ancient place. Sometimes the path would go through a tiny village made of dark stone houses. Cows would look at me over a stone wall. It was a quiet, gentle land. But Galicia was not easy. The hills were constant. The path went up, and then it went down, and then it went up again. My legs, which had become used to the flat land, had to work hard again. And it rained. It rained a lot in Galicia. Not the hard, angry rain of the storm. This was a soft, persistent rain, a drizzle that made everything wet and grey. Some pilgrims complained about the rain and the hills, but I loved it. The green landscape was so full of life. After the dry, empty meseta, my eyes were hungry for the color green. The rain made the world feel clean and fresh. Walking in the soft rain was peaceful. I would pull the hood of my rain jacket over my head and walk in my own little world. The sound of the rain on my hood was a soft, rhythmic drumming. The albergues in Galicia were different too. They were often smaller, more rustic. Many were donativos. This means there is no fixed price. You pay what you can afford. You give a donation to help keep the place open for the next pilgrims. This system was built on trust and generosity. It was a beautiful idea. I stayed in one donativo that was an old stone farmhouse. The owner, a woman with long grey hair, welcomed us with a warm smile. She had a big pot of vegetable soup cooking on the stove. The whole house smelled delicious. That night, about 15 of us sat around a fire. We drank warm tea and shared stories. The rain tapped gently on the window. It was a perfect pilgrim evening. Cozy, simple, and full of warmth. The yellow arrows in Galicia were often old and mossy. They were carved into stones or painted on old walls. You had to look carefully for them. It felt like a treasure hunt. Finding an old faded arrow felt like a small victory. As I walked through Galicia, I started to see signs. Santiago, 150 kilometers. Then Santiago, 100 kilometers. The end was getting closer. A new feeling started to grow inside me, a mix of excitement and sadness. I was excited to reach my goal, the city of Santiago de Compostela, but I was also sad that my journey was almost over. This simple life of walking was now my normal life. I did not want it to end. I met more pilgrims in Galicia. The path was more crowded now. Many people start their Camino in Galicia to walk only the last 100 kilometers. The feeling was a little different. There was more talking, more laughing, but it was still a good feeling. We were all walking to the same place. We were all on the last part of our journey together. I walked slowly through the green hills. I tried to enjoy every moment. The sound of the birds in the morning, the taste of the fresh bread from a village bakery, the sight of a rainbow after a rain shower. The end was near, but I was not in a hurry. The journey itself was the destination. Galicia, with its rain and its green hills, was teaching me one final lesson. The lesson of savoring the final steps. Chapter 14. The final day. The last day of walking felt different from all the other days. I woke up with a strange feeling in my stomach. It was a mix of excitement, nervousness, and a deep, quiet sadness. Today, I would arrive in Santiago. My walk would be over. I left the albergue while it was still dark. The path was only 20 kilometers to Santiago. It was a short day. I wanted to arrive in the city early. I wanted to have time to feel the moment. The first part of the walk was through a forest of eucalyptus trees. The smell was strong and clean in the cool morning air. I walked with many other pilgrims. The path was full of a quiet, excited energy. We were all walking towards the same goal. As the sun rose, we reached a place called Monte do Gozo, the Mount of Joy. From the top of this hill, you can see the city of Santiago for the first time. The 3 tall towers of the famous cathedral were visible in the distance. I stood there with a group of other pilgrims. We were all silent. We just looked. For weeks, Santiago had been a word on a sign, a distant goal. Now it was real. I could see it. It was a powerful moment. Some people cried. Some people hugged each other. I just felt a deep sense of quiet awe. I had walked all this way, from the mountains of France, across the flat plains, through the green hills, and now there it was. The last few kilometers were not beautiful. The path went through the suburbs of the city, along busy roads. It was a strange way to end such a beautiful journey, but in a way, it was perfect. It was a reminder that the journey is not always easy or beautiful. Sometimes you just have to walk along a noisy road to get to where you are going. I followed the yellow arrows, through the streets of Santiago. The city was busy and full of people, but now I did not feel out of place like I did in Pamplona. I was not a tourist. I was a pilgrim. I had earned my place here. Finally, I walked into the old part of the city. The streets were narrow and made of stone. And then I walked into a huge, open square. And there it was, the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela. It was enormous. It was more beautiful and more impressive than any picture in a book. I stopped in the middle of the square and just looked up at it. I slowly took off my backpack and let it fall to the stone ground. I had carried it for 800 kilometers. I did not need to carry it anymore. Other pilgrims were all around me. They were sitting on the ground, leaning against their backpacks. They were looking at the cathedral. We were all smiling. We were all tired. We were all full of emotions that we could not put into words. I saw Klaus from Germany. I saw Jin from Korea. We did not speak. We just looked at each other and smiled. We had made it. I found a quiet spot and sat down on the cold stones of the square. I thought about my journey. I thought about the first day, climbing the Pyrenees. Full of fear and doubt, I thought about the kindness of the woman in the rain. I thought about the long, flat meseta. I thought about my stone at the Iron Cross. I thought about my injured ankle. I thought about all the people I had met. And I thought about my mother. I thought about her empty chair. The chair was still empty. My mother was still gone. The walk did not change that. It was not a magic cure for my sadness, but something inside me had changed. The sadness was still there, but it was different. It was not a heavy, dark weight anymore. It was a part of me, a quiet memory that I could carry now. The walk had taught me how to carry it. It had shown me that I was strong. It had shown me that even after a great loss, life can still be full of small moments of beauty, kindness, and grace. I sat in the square for a long time, just looking and feeling. I was a pilgrim. I had reached my destination. The path under my feet had come to an end, but I knew that the journey inside me would continue. Chapter 15. A new kind of quiet. I spent 2 days in Santiago. The city was full of pilgrims and tourists. There was a special energy in the air. I went to the pilgrim's office and showed them my credential, my pilgrim passport. It was full of stamps from all the towns and villages I had slept in. The volunteer looked at all my stamps and smiled. He gave me my final certificate, the Compostela. It was a beautiful document with my name written in Latin. It was proof. I had done it. I went to the special pilgrim's mass in the cathedral. The cathedral was huge and dark inside. It was full of pilgrims from all over the world. At the end of the service, they did something amazing. They swung a giant incense burner called the Botafumeiro. It swung from the ceiling all the way across the church, leaving a cloud of sweet-smelling smoke. It was an old tradition to clean the air from the smell of the tired, dirty pilgrims of the past. It was beautiful to watch. But after the ceremonies and the sights of the city, I started to feel a strange emptiness. The walk was over. There was no yellow arrow to follow tomorrow. There was no backpack to pack. My purpose for the last 5 weeks was finished. What now? I walked through the streets of Santiago. I saw other pilgrims I recognized from the path. We would nod and say, Buen camino. But it felt different now. The journey was over. We were all slowly preparing to go back to our other lives. On my last evening, I found a small quiet park. I sat on a bench and wrote in my journal. I wrote about the end of the journey. I wrote about the strange feeling of being finished. I was proud of what I had done, but I was also sad it was over. I would miss the simplicity of the path. I would miss the community of pilgrims. I would miss the feeling of waking up every morning with a single, simple purpose: to walk. The next day, I took a bus to the airport. The bus was fast. It covered in 1 hour a distance that took me 3 days to walk. It felt wrong. I looked out the window at the green hills of Galicia. I saw the path sometimes, running alongside the road. I saw pilgrims walking. They were small figures with backpacks, moving slowly across the landscape. Just a few days ago, I was one of them. Now I was watching them from a window. I flew home. My house was exactly as I had left it. It was clean and quiet. My mother's chair was still in its place by the window. I put my keys on the table. I was home. I stood in the living room and I listened. The quiet was still there, but it was different. It was not the heavy, loud quiet from before I left. It was a peaceful quiet. It was just a quiet house. It was my home. I went to the window and looked out at my garden. It was overgrown with weeds, but the flowers my mother had planted were still there. They were beautiful. The next morning, I woke up in my own comfortable bed. I made a cup of tea, and I sat down, not in my usual chair. I sat down in my mother's chair. I sat in her green cushioned chair, and I looked out the window at the garden. The sun was rising. A small bird was singing on the fence. It was a simple, beautiful morning. The walk was over, but it was not gone. I had carried my sadness across a country. I had learned how to live with it. I had learned that I was strong. I had learned about kindness. I had learned to appreciate simple things: a glass of water, a warm meal, a dry bed, a beautiful sunrise. My life would go back to normal. I would go back to my job at the library. I would see my friends, but something inside me was different. I had found a new kind of quiet, a quiet that was not empty, a quiet that was full of peace. The Camino was finished, but my walk was not. Life is a path, and all we can do is put one foot in front of the other and keep walking. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more.